Hello and welcome to the workshop. In this video I'm going to talk about the mistakes that most DIYers make when installing French cleats and making tool holders for them. And I'll show you how I went from this, my first efforts, to this. And you can see there's a remarkable difference. And I'm going to share some of those secrets that I came up with in this video. So just by following a few of the principles that I'm going to show you, you'll save both time, money and wall space. So the overall premise here really is to think before you cleat. And let's start with the main question actually that I see on forums and in Facebook groups, etc. is how far apart should your wall cleats be? And if you ask 5 people, you'll probably get 5 different responses. Here mine are actually around 5 inches point to point, but this is on an old wall. This is the first wall that I fitted wall cleats to. On the setup that you saw actually have a different dimension, but that's not the point at the moment. I have 5 inches here. If you look on forums, some people have them at maybe 3 inches apart, 4, 5, 6 and so on. Now there's no real right or wrong, but you do need to consider what you'll be storing. If you're storing or plan to store small parts and consumables, then you want your wall cleats to be closer together. If you're going to be storing larger items like power tools, etc., then they could be further apart. This is no different to if you buy storage bins. You wouldn't buy large storage bins for small parts, and you wouldn't buy small storage bins for large parts. And that's pretty much the same situation here. Furthermore, if you're planning on storing, say, gardening equipment, then you may only need 1 or 2 cleats on the entire wall, because these are tool items like strimmers, spades, forks, etc., etc. So there's no point in having lots of wood on the wall if you're only hanging something up here and it goes all the way almost to the floor. I'll show you a photo where there's a wall like this fully clad with cleats from top to bottom, and yet it's got garden equipment on and only 1 or 2 of the cleats are actually used. So think before you cleat up the wall, as it has a large impact on what you can and can't store. So the second mistake that I see people making, and myself, I was guilty of this as well, is that people ignore the basic geometry of the relationship between the cleat and the tool holder, and they design from scratch every time they want to make a tool holder of some sort. Now, if you ignore the geometry, what happens is this. So this is wasted at the moment in this scenario. This is wasted here because the next cleat that I put on won't fit up to there, and so on. And I get the same problem down here. This is going to clash here, and so on. This won't fit here. It won't drop down because of it, and so on. So what I suggest you do is something similar, or at least think about this. Now here I've got just a piece of plexiglass, and I've screwed on a cleat which is exactly level with the top, which is how you would probably build most of your tool holders. And I've got another piece of cleat here which would go onto the back of another tool holder. If I hang this here and I put this in, say, here, and get a tape measure, I wouldn't want my cleat to be taller than this, because then it would start impeding on this one. So let's see, what have we got here? We've got around 14 inches. If I move it up, To here I've got 9 inches. Here I've got 4 inches, and down here I'll have 19 inches. Now, if I always make my tool holders these dimensions, they will never clash like I just showed you. They will fit nicely with a small gap of about ½ an inch or so in order to get them on and off. Now you can, if you prefer, be very accurate and do this sort of thing. There's nothing wrong with them touching. It's just that if I want to remove this one, I will have to remove this one first. Now, you see a lot of people say, oh, the advantage of French cleats is that you can move them around. Yes, you can. But to be honest, the reality of day-to-day life with them is you don't move them very often. But there's nothing wrong with doing it like this. I had a whole wall where I had them where they were just touching, so they filled the wall. As you saw at the beginning on my other wall where I have my neat French cleat system, I've got a 6mm gap all round because I manufacture those on a laser cutter, and it's very easy to become accurate. I also use wall spacers like so I have accurate distances between the top of the cleats one to another. So once you have this, if I want to make something small, I know that it's going to be a 4-inch high cleat or a 9-inch high for slightly bigger, or 14. Now if I wanted to, say, make a board that's going to hold a hammer, I can see that it's going to be 14 inches long, and all I've got to do is start playing with different widths. If I just want one hammer, it's going to be quite narrow. If I want 2 hammers, it's going to be a bit wider, but they will always be at 14 inches high in this case. Now this is going to vary, these dimensions will vary depending on what your spacings are on your wall. So next up, I have a golden rule wherever possible, and it's possible nearly all the time, is to use slots, not holes. Now this is the very first French cleat that I ever made, and as you can see it holds screwdrivers, files, etc. But all of them drop in, and so this space can't be used for anything because it would trap whatever's in here. And that goes the same for these chisels. This was one of the earliest ones I made as well, and this glove dispenser couldn't be any lower than this because I wouldn't be able to get the chisels out. So this area here is wasted, and if you look on Pinterest, for example, just search French cleats, you'll see that nearly everybody does this. But it's much simpler to make slots. And what I've done here, I've just got a piece of 2x2, and hopefully you can see where I've marked out there. I could cut these pieces out on the table saw quite easily, and then my screwdrivers would slot in like so. That would be real easy, and now I've freed up, I can use this space to store more things. And that's the general idea, is the more efficiently you can use the wall, the more tools you'll have on the wall, and the less things will be cluttering the rest of your spaces or end up hidden in drawers and so on. Now to show you that further, here's one of my neat French cleat screwdriver holders, and look, I only need to raise that 6mm to get that off. This holds 11 screwdrivers in a small space with no room lost above it. And here I've got just about the same, might be 12 here or so, but just about the same, but all of this space is redundant up here. So think about that. I'll show a couple of other examples. I've got my chisel holder now. The one I've made and sell is more like this with rare earth magnets. So the bottom of the chisel goes into a small recess and the chisel is held on with a rare earth magnet. So once again, I don't think there's really any situation where you need to use holes. But as I say, look on Pinterest, that's what nearly everybody does, because this is quick and dirty. But to make some slots using the table saw is also very quick, but will save you a lot of room. So next up, I would advise not to use scrap wood to build your French cleat tool holders. Now, that may sound silly, but let me explain. Whenever I work with plywood to build things in the workshop, I'm generally using 12mm ply. So my scrap wood that I had around the workshop was 12mm. So I ended up building all of these things out of 12mm ply. And that's wrong on two counts, really. It's overkill. There's pretty much, there are very few cleats that I would say you need to make in 12mm or 1/2 inch ply. I've made virtually all of mine now in 6mm, and so that's actually half the cost. Now I might say this was a piece of scrap, but the next time I'm looking for a piece of ply that's this big, I've used it on a bloody spanner to hold spanners on my wall, which weigh, you know, nothing. From now on, with very few exceptions, unless I'm trying to store something that's super heavy, I'll only ever use 6mm ply, which is, as I say, half the cost. So bear that in mind. Don't necessarily use up all of your good scrap just because it's laying around. That will come in handy further down the road for other projects. So last up is, I would say, the biggest mistake people make is they use their French cleat wall to store stuff. Now that may sound ridiculous because that's sort of the point, but it's what stuff to store and where. Now what I would say, the best advice I could give anybody who's thinking about making a French cleat wall or who already has one is list your 10 most used tools and make holders for those tools and put them above your bench where you work the most, or next to the bench where you work the most, because if you have a holder for the 10 tools that you use the most, they aren't cluttering up your desk. Now I will cut to another shot and show you my wall, but I've got, next to my miter saw, I have a speed square, I have my ear defenders, I have my tape measures and a pencil, so that whenever I come up to the miter saw, those tools that I need to work around with that saw are right next to me. Now also by the bench I have hammers, I have screwdrivers, I have CA glue and activator, the things that I need the most that I'm always using. Instead of them cluttering up my bench, they're next to my bench, so I can just go like this to get them. But they're not on my bench getting in my way, and I would massively recommend doing that because my efficiency in my workflow and efficiency went through the roof when I started doing that. So that's 5 things that, or 5 mistakes that I made that I've rectified now to some degree, that hopefully will improve your French cleat system. But I would say this, you know, this is just advice. There are no French cleat police. Nobody's going to come knocking on your workshop door saying you're under arrest. It's your workshop, your rules. But I have found that these things made a difference for me. Now if you found this video useful, please like and subscribe. That makes a massive difference to a small channel like mine. Hit the little bell icon to get notified when I make new videos. I try and make a new video each week. If you'd like to know more about my own French cleats, the neat French cleats that you saw on the wall, the ones that are made on the laser, then please visit neatfrenchcleat.com. Anyway, I've been Alan, you've been watching. I'll see you in the next video.